Now, Alex, against that pretty appalling background of what's happening on the battlefield, it looks as though there's worse in store from the West and NATO.
It does, Brian, but the matter is controversial. In particular, Finnish and French troops are now said by some sources, although unverified as far as I'm concerned, to be stationed in Ukraine, and not just in the rear, in the west of the country, but according to some accounts, near that front line in the Donbass and around Chasiv Yar, which seems to be about to fall. So Stephen Bryan, whose Substack is called Weapons and Strategy, has an overview of the current situation entitled NATO is starting to deploy troops in Ukraine, although he means individual NATO member states, of course, not NATO as a bloc. And he says Russia is racing to win. That is well worth a read. Embedded in that piece is this graphic from Rybar. Everyone will know, I think, who follows this, that Rybar is an unashamedly pro-Russian Telegram channel. There's no claim of impartiality here. But look, Rybar has what its prima facie says is photographic evidence of men with Finnish army and Finnish national patches, not just in the right bank or the west of the country, but way over in Kharkiv in the northeast, the second city of the country, around Korotych airfield. And it gets even more interesting. First of all, the aerial support. So this is from the middle of last month, but as of the 18th of April 2014, 3 Dutch F-16s were delivered to Ukraine. And there was a publicity stunt where people, including the Dutch Defense Minister Kajsa Ollongren, the lady you see second from right here, dressed up as if they were F-16 pilots and did the strut out to the 3 airframes, as tweeted by Sonja from Ende, a dissident. The Asia Times, a legacy and quite mainstream and major Hong Kong-based title, which I admit has been pro-Russian in the past, and the claims here are contested, to my knowledge, also including by a Ukrainian defense attaché in a Ukrainian embassy abroad. But the claim is that Macron has sidestepped a sort of gentleman's understanding not to deploy French citizens as a NATO member state troops to Ukraine by allegedly using French Foreign Legion troops. The name and the reputation go before it. The Foreign Legion only recruits non-Frenchmen. And I do say the Frenchmen because it doesn't take women. The claim here in the Asia Times is that these men have been sent to support the Ukrainian 54th Independent Mechanized Brigade, so the guys who drive around at greater speed but who are also able to fight as infantrymen, right over in Slovyansk in the Donbass. It's allegedly the 3rd Infantry Regiment of the Légion Étrangère that's involved. The officers are Frenchmen, the men under arms, men at arms are foreign. So we don't know whether that's confirmed or not. Reuters has egg on its face because people will be aware that there was a lot of talk about Cameron getting ahead of the curve, which we reported on, and giving away too much detail before the time. But now Reuters, as of last week, was obliged to retract its reporting, which it doesn't like doing often, but they had the integrity to do it. The placeholder simply says, as of the 2nd of May, 4 days ago, that their previous story, their previous wire saying that Cameron had promised aid to Ukraine on behalf of Britain had been withdrawn because they wanted to fact-check some of the details. This may or may not have to do with the Latvian foreign minister's recent claim that there was a list of NATO donor countries which had tacitly, under the table, told Ukraine that they were free to use the donated weapons directly against the Russians in Russian territory. May or may not. A lot of these things have to be taken with suspended judgment, I'm afraid, because much as people might think, well, they would deny it, wouldn't they? The Ukrainians are denying a lot of what's on here. This photographic evidence, again, has come from social media, from Vexa, and by a very reputable and reliable viewer of mine. And it purports to show, I'm no doubt that it does, US troops being photographed using Korean 155s, the big caliber shells that are the hardest to restock, that have the longest lead-in time, as people know who followed this. So it may be that South Korea is filling up Uncle Sam's empty war chest in that regard, because of the well-known problems with stocking. The viewer comment by the viewer who sent me not the previous photo, but the Asia Times piece before that said this: Military Summary, a channel he trusts well, is reporting a heavy bombing attack in Mykolaiivka on the coast. He says most channels are reporting an energy facility to be the target, so that's a blackout strategy against the Ukrainians. However, he adds a reliable Russian source is insisting that the first French contingent of 100 to 150 artillery specialists, the standard ruse of having a NATO man standing alongside the Ukrainians, training them so that you can plausibly thinly deny that they were firing at the Russians. He says that these French specialists were deployed to that very area, i.e. the Russians were having a go directly at them. On the next slide, which I won't read out in full, he reminds us, and we've played the Pyotr Tolstoy clip on French news, where he said, "We will kill your men that come to Ukraine." Russia has warned that they would do exactly that, whether it's Odessa or up in the front. If it sees NATO men, it will go for them. And of course, that's happened in the past in Kherson and in other places, Kharkiv too, where the French have lost men. The viewer asks, what the heck does Macron think he's doing, if confirmed? Finally, he says this is an important claim because Macron has made statements on strategic ambiguity, making overtures to Putin, whether sincere or not. And he alludes to this reported list of nations who have said to the Ukrainians, sub rosa, go ahead and bash the Russians directly with our stuff, including on their own territory. And he notes, and this the same happened with Libya, with naval contretemps, there is an Italian Franco-Italian split. Yeah, the Italian foreign minister seems to have departed from the Macronian line in this regard. The viewer also reminded us of this, and it's just a quick snapshot I made because it's completely fresh. It will be in show notes. The leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, so the majority leader in the lower house of Congress, has already said, Mr. Jeffries, that US will have to send troops to Ukraine, whether they're called NATO troops or not. That's supposedly a high probability. And I'll just round off this segment by reminding people that Rodney Atkinson, well known to our long-term viewers for his geopolitical commentary, notes that Chasiv Yar is about to fall and has a lot of detail, which you can see, I won't read it out, on what's going on with Russians going very targetedly for warehouses and NATO troop locations, if they are now present, around the south and east of the country. And he notes that there are big problems with runaways, with discipline, desertion, corruption, the internal energy. And he's quoting a retired spook colonel, Mr. Starikov, as saying that we don't have a regular army in Ukraine anymore. The NATO-trained army of just under 500,000 has largely been destroyed by the Russians. You reported on that before, Brian. And finally, this is picking up on a Der Spiegel piece behind a paywall. I'm sorry that it's German, but the commander of the Black Sea fleet that has been sent out to support the Ukrainians has said that he now has too few frigates at his disposal in order to guarantee the safety of merchant marine traffic. And he says that there's 2 or 3. This may exclude about another 2 or 3 French and Italian frigates, but even if we're generous, there's half a dozen frigates available now.
Alex, thank you very much. Well, it's a confused situation, but the Ukrainians are definitely suffering on the battlefield. I'll just put this meme up. I think this is so sad because it's an astute view of what's happening. So we've got American, British and European politicians laughing and saying, and then we told Zelensky, if you beat Russia, we'll let you join NATO. While this situation goes on, of course, hundreds of thousands of men and women are dying on the battlefield. Well, if you like what UK Column is doing as a news reporter, then please support us. That's very important for us. Please help us out financially by taking out a membership with us. It's a monthly subscription, and it is people who pay for us on a monthly basis that keep the UK Column going. So if you're watching and you're new and you'd like to support us, have a look at the website and joining the UK Column. Please share our material. Please purchase from the shop. Please share our material. And if you send our material out, please make sure that you acknowledge it's from the UK Column. That's all we ask. Now, also, we've got a promotion here for part 3 of an article. And let's bring you in very briefly. Mark, tell us what this one's about.
This is the existing article, part 2. BBC's local democracy service broadens the mass media cartel's monopolistic network. This is just a reminder that this is up and it's an ongoing series. I've had 2 posts so far, and the third one is coming up. And what I may be looking at, Brian, is think tanks creating their own news organizations and pushing them as legitimate news, but coming directly from think tanks, not just reporters that have been affiliated with think tanks, like you mentioned, but actually directly from think tanks. So look for that fairly soon here at UKC.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. And we'll just have this on screen, a very nice letter. This is People's Assembly Somerset, who sent us a nice letter saying what they're doing, but also saying that they're helping to advertise the UK column. So people taking action in an appropriate way against local councils and sustainable 2030 sustainable development goals, and they're doing that by getting together. Now, Alex, just bring you back in very briefly.